of those key focus areas. So in order to keep us to time, we've got a lot of content today. I'm going to hand you over to my colleague Brad to chat to us a little bit more about the more local outlook. Brad, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Sam. Morning again, members. I think from a business owner and just, I guess, a human being, not AI, perspective, operating in South Africa's financial services sector, the evolving regulatory environment that we all operate in can come across as overwhelming and sometimes may feel like a regulatory roller coaster. Even though changes and/or updates to our legal landscape most of the time are accompanied by statements of intent, press releases, as well as clearer context provided by us, being Sam and I, we can appreciate that there may very well be sentiments from members and questions like, where did this come from? What was the thinking behind this? We already have so many X amounts of compliance requirements as well. And is it just our regulators on this particular mission? So we definitely appreciate that from our members. And that, members, is the overarching flavor of this morning's coffee with Sam and Brad. In support of Sam's opening remarks, our goal is to provide members with a high level yet easy to understand view of conversations taking place both at home and across our borders that have an effect on your business either right now or in the near future. As noted, Sam shall provide members with insights following a recent sitting of the World Federation of Insurance Intermediaries, and I will share highlights from the FSCA's industry conference from earlier this year. Next slide, please, Sam. Great. So because we are proudly South African and support everything that is local, we thought it best to start with discussions taking place within our regulator, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. So during early March 2024, the FSCA hosted its first industry-wide conference in Bryanston under the theme Inspiring Trust, Evolutions in Financial Conduct Regulation. This in-person opportunity to engage not only with FSCA officials, but also our counterparts from other associations such as ASISA, BASA, SAIA, as well as other government agencies and ombudsman schemes, was a no-brainer for the FIA to participate. So the actual purpose of the conference was to bring together stakeholders in the financial sector to share insights on regulatory trends and the impact thereof on the global, regional, and South African landscapes. Now, I must be honest, and Sam, please don't swear me, heading to the conference, I had to manage my own expectations. Due to the fact that this was the first conference of its kind, I was uncertain as to exactly how the regulator would engage with attendees. In other words, were attendees going to be spoken at, or would this be an actual discussion and engagement around critical events and actions taken by the regulator in our sector? So my first slice of humble pie that accompanied my morning coffee on the morning was the fact that not only was the FSCA Commissioner, Unathi Kamlane, in attendance and opened the actual event, all deputy commissioners were also in attendance and were actively involved in the panel discussions over the 2 days. And those deputy commissioners are Astrid Linden, Catherine Gibson, as well as Fazana Badat. For me, members, that was a sign of an intentional commitment by the regulator to engage from a senior perspective with role players. That includes FSPs, that includes trade association representatives. To this point, I think having senior officials together in the same room made me realize that they are more than just signatories to directives and notices. And actually witnessing the engagement amongst attendees, I think this just made it easier wanting or finding yourself needing to engage with the FSCA going forward. Again, this was my take. Next slide, please, Sam. Great. Some of the topics displayed on the screen in no particular order gives you an idea of the overall narrative of the conference, which was not just sit, listen, and this is where we are. It was about giving stakeholders a better understanding of the thinking of the regulator, not just the impact of the grey listing, but also getting direct feedback from National Treasury as to the status of our action plan with regard to the grey listing, as well as the regulator's thoughts or view on the ever-changing digital landscape and its impact on financial services. The Commissioner, Unathi Kamlane, in his opening address, advised that the program and the topics over the 2-day conference sought to highlight the key phenomena which have characterized the state of the South African financial services sector in recent times from a conduct perspective. So the first issue highlighted by the Commissioner was of the cost of living crisis and the increasing vulnerability of consumers, and how do we think the role of financial institutions in that context is really kind of looking. The second spoke to the issue of market integrity and the need for South Africa to get ourselves off the FATF grey list, and to do so within the agreed time frame in terms of the action plan. The issue directly impacts the reputation and credibility of the South African financial sector on the global stage. The third issue was the structural change that the two-pot retirement system represents in terms of the retirement savings landscape and culture, and how we think about retirement savings policy and outcomes going forward. The fourth and final issue highlighted by the Commissioner was about the conference theme, which was about building trust in the financial services sector. What the FSCA's assessment of where the sector stands in terms of conduct, reputation, and levels of trust in the sector, and that also includes aspects around innovation and how technology is deployed as business models change and evolve, as the FSCA's ability to respond to those changes and deliver on treating customers fairly outcomes and alike. Next slide, please, Sam. Thank you. So in his keynote address, the Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, the SARB, Mr. Lesetja Kganyago, highlighted to stakeholders the relationship between market conduct and financial stability. The SARB, which incorporates the Prudential Authority, has ultimate responsibility for financial stability. That's a bit of a tongue twister. At the same time, the FSCA is the apex authority for market conduct, and so there is this clear separation. However, whilst there is this clear separation with respect to individual mandates, the Governor noted that in order to protect financial stability and to restore it when a crisis breaks out, the SARB does not and cannot operate in isolation. The SARB relies on other authorities such as National Treasury, the Financial Intelligence Sector, the FIC, the National Credit Regulator, and of course, the FSCA. The Governor further highlighted the impact of the global financial crisis in 2008 and the re-engineering of finance to make sure another global financial crisis is impossible. What was then required was to have a good policy regime for protecting financial stability, as well as an effective regime for regulating conduct. And so, members, this is where that uncomfortable but honest discussion of the cost of compliance entered the room. The Governor wholly acknowledged the trickle-down effect of costs associated with these forms of regulatory updates and/or changes. When the Governor made the following comment, hold on to your horses. If you think that the cost of compliance is expensive, try the cost of non-compliance. You actually could not argue with that logic after listening and understanding the context behind most of the good policy regime changes following the global financial crisis.
I think it's such an important point, Brad. You and I both regularly hear from our members around the increasing cost of compliance. But I think it is a sobering reminder that if there wasn't the regulation and there wasn't the compliance and the ultimate end protection of consumers, the cost would be far, far greater. And it is, for me, an interesting way of reframing the narrative, and I think a message that it's important to continue to convey. So I think great that he said it, and thank you for sharing that with our members.
We fully align, Sam. You know what? After listening to the Governor's address, it was hard not to understand that logic. It was hard to disagree that, we as a collective are still here in financial services largely due to the resilience of our legal framework, and that the potential threat of another global financial crisis requires the authorities to put those necessary protections in place, which may come at a cost. Surprise, surprise. So to close off, what I took from the Governor's address was a clearer understanding of the relationship between the authorities and an appreciation and respect for the overall costs that come with these regulatory regime changes. Next slide, please, Sam. Please, members, do not start rolling your eyes. To once again confirm, the two-part retirement system comes into effect on the 1st of September 2024. The overall FSCA approach to the two-part system is both capacity to deal with the rule amendments in the short term, but also to focus on education in order to enhance member outcomes. So for this session, what was really refreshing and encouraging to hear was the understanding by the regulator that consumer education around two-part has to be a multi-prong approach. So that means more than just from the product provider and also more than just from servicing intermediaries. Highlighted for conference attendees was the responsibility of labor and the worker unions and the role that they will need to play in educating their respective members around amendments to the retirement fund system in South Africa ahead of 1 September 2024. In other words, there already needs to be consumer education programs and campaigns leading up to September 2024. So when members consider the amount of unions that we have in the country and the masses of employees that they represent, again, it just makes practical sense that they also need to come to the table to ensure that if consumers, their members, are informed as to what to expect come 1 September.
I think possibly, what is missing for me here in terms of this is the important role of the broker in terms of educating their clients, because just as important a message as it is for the unions to get to their members, the brokers really play a vital role here. And I think it is a huge part of being able to evidence their value proposition to their clients, this move to the two-pot system. What we're looking to do as the FIA is to host a webinar for our members through our EB Exco on the 20th of June to really help articulate to members what those changes are, what the impacts are, what the consequences are. So not only for yourselves and your own retirement savings, but also for your clients, is that you can take that message and that understanding to them, because this really is an opportunity to show your worth, to absolutely evidence your value to your clients as a consequence of what the impact is of these changes, and to share that message. So for me, I think the regulator missed a trick here, only focusing on the unions, but it gives us an opportunity to remind our members of the important role that they play and the opportunities that are available to them through these initiatives.
Thank you for that delicious plug, Sam. I think, again, this is why the FI is here, to highlight the importance of the role that intermediaries need to play. So just to confirm, 20th of June, that's the date of our two-part webinar, I beg your pardon. So members just need to keep a lookout for that. If you just need to double check the dates, which is confirm whether you've got an invite or not, you can pop Sam and I an email right after the session. And then, Sam, just to close this particular session, the FSCA also added that it intends to work towards monitoring the impacts of the system change, and added that more general public awareness is required so that consumers understand the implications of the regime change insofar as it relates to accessing their savings. Next slide, please, Sam. So what was particularly refreshing about this discussion item was that from the perspective of the regulator, there definitely was not a sense to either now come up with an overflow of regulation that may unintentionally deter the use of financial technology and digital innovation in our sector. The FSCA noted that advancements also come with significant risks such as cybercrime and data privacy concerns. Rather, the FSCA was explicit in advising that their considerations, insofar as it relates to technology and innovation, is from a consumer perspective. In other words, what may be the possible impacts on the average person on the street when faced with new technology from FSPs, by way of example. This both from a perspective from how they will be engaged with from a product as well as a customer service perspective. The FSCA added that they do not intend to regulate technology, but may introduce papers on artificial intelligence risks. According to the FSCA, consumer protection risks of AI include an unintended bias, discrimination and unfair outcomes, lack of explainability, data privacy, as well as competition. Now, Sam, I must admit, I then also started revisiting some of my most recent interactions with AI bots and the like when engaging around financial product offerings, and then actually realized the potential threat of an unintended bias by the particular product provider. I think it can be very easy to get excited about the fast and or immediate response rates of these AI bots without realizing that you could actually be led down a predetermined path towards particular product and or policies. So I'm not putting the fear of God, I'm just kind of highlighting that this is a real threat. Also, whether you are a product provider or an intermediary who will start using AI or other digital platforms or products when engaging with consumers, the FSCA made it clear that whilst AI continues to develop and evolve, financial institutions will continue to be assessed on the principles of fairness and will still be responsible for outcomes regardless of AI tools and services that may be used by those institutions. For me, what was key here, or what I took from this, is that the FSCA is fully aware that digital innovation will take place and continues to take place regardless of the current regulatory framework that we find ourselves in, and that whilst they can provide guidance on AI risk, etc., nothing will change as regards to how the regulator expects players in this market to conduct themselves and operate, i.e. the overarching principles of fairness and being responsible for those respective outcomes. Acknowledging the significance of implications of AI, the FSCA advised that it will conduct a market study later in this year on its impact on financial services. The study aims to explore the potential benefits and associated risks, ensuring that we embrace AI's advancements while still maintaining a balance between innovation and safeguarding of customers and the integrity of our sector. Next slide, please, Sam. Crypto, another delicious item. The FSCA used the session as an opportunity to provide a status update on the call from the regulator that persons who provide financial services in relation to crypto assets, also known as crypto asset service providers, CASPs, were required to submit license applications. So just a bit of background again for members. As members are aware, last year, I beg your pardon, the FSCA declared crypto assets as a financial product, mainly due to the increased interest in and risk posed to consumers in relation to crypto asset services through scams and other fraudulent activities. The persons acting as CASPs were required to submit the application to become a licensed financial services provider in relation to crypto assets to the FSCA between the 1st of June and 30th of November 2023. Persons who are currently acting as CAPs without holding a license from the FSCA are only allowed to operate as such and are exempt from the requirement to hold a license if they submitted their license applications on or before the 30th of November 2023. So members, the update provided to conference attendees around the application process was that over 350 license applications were submitted to the FSCA. As at the 12th of March, so that was the day before the actual conference, a total of 59 licenses had been approved by the FSCA. Interestingly, 34 license applications that were submitted were subsequently withdrawn by CASPs, mainly due to their lack of or inability to demonstrate compliance with the competency requirements, a lack of clear and comprehensive business plans, policies, processes, and procedures that incorporate crypto assets, as well as a general lack of operational readiness to conduct crypto assets services. So in my mind, well, I think in all our minds, these should be basic principles that should have already been developed and or implemented by CAPs before submitting their license applications. So I think a bit of a conundrum there, were these FSPs just super eager and not ready? Or did they think that, they could just cruise into this crypto assets discussion? So that was a bit of an interesting insight for me. The FSCA further confirmed that a further 262 license applications were still being processed at that time. So this is 12th of March this year. Attendees were also reminded that CASP are required to be registered with the financial intelligence sector, the FIC, as accountable institutions. What was particularly interesting in this regard was only 43 out of the 81 FIC registered CASP had applied for phase licenses. Flowing from this, the FSCA would undertake an investigation in relation to entities conducting unregistered business, including those 38 FIC registered CASPs who did not apply for authorization. Next slide, please, Sam. Thank you. As you can see, members, I grouped the highlights from the session into two themes. The first being of hope. The hope provided by the then National Treasury Deputy Director General, Ismail Mominat, was that South Africa actually would be able to exit the grey list by Feb 2025. However, Momo, as he's more well known as, made it very clear that this would require faster changes to the necessary regulatory framework systems, etc. The second theme really speaks to firmer action against FSPs. The Financial Action Task Force, the FATF, expects to see a sustained increase in investigations and prosecutions of financial crimes in SA. Members can now understand why, over the last few months, we have seen a number of administrative sanctions being imposed by the FSCA on entities for their failure to comply with certain provisions of the Financial Intelligence Center Act, FICA. One of the aspects highlighted by the FATF report related to a lack of enforcement by the regulator in this regard. One of the 22 actions, as per the report, is that there needs to be visible enforcement by the regulators and that they need to be seen as taking action where entities are not meeting their regulatory obligations. With respect to the non-financial sector threats, non-financial businesses and professions, especially law firms, Sam and I excuse ourselves from that discussion, and estate agencies appear to be the main areas of concern. Risk and compliance returns are required from those sectors by the FIC to keep up-to-date supervisory risk assessment tools to identify higher risk non-financial businesses and professions as a basis for risk-based supervisions. Unfortunately, members, to date, it appears that those sectors appear slow to come to the party in terms of providing data, but the FSCA and the FIC, who were also in attendance at the conference, made it clear that they'll be really pushing hard in these sectors to provide the relevant data, which would lead to us exiting the grey list. And finally, an interesting aspect to the effect of South Africa's grey listing on our neighbors is that as grey listing has resulted in diminished confidence in South Africa, it actually makes it difficult for South Africa to help our African neighbors avoid their own grey listing. So for me, members, it was really refreshing and encouraging to see the policymaker and regulator also considering the impact of our grey listing on African neighbors. Next slide, please, Sam. So members, I left the conference, I beg your pardon, feeling informed, inspired, and relieved. Informed because I got a clearer understanding of the regulator's position on a number of items. Inspired because I felt that the regulator wants to walk this journey with stakeholders. And also relieved because I saw and experienced room for engagement and that grey listing can be resolved. And so while I was with our regulator here at home, at the exact same time, Sam, together with the FIA CEO as well as the FIA president, was at the WFII conference that was well represented by all broker associations across the Americas, Europe, Africa, and Asia Pacific. So from one legal barista to another, Sam, over to you.
Thanks very much, Brad. Much appreciated. Thanks for all the insights into the conference which you attended. As Brad has kindly introduced for me, we did attend as members of the World Federation of Insurance Intermediaries, their conference, which took place on the 9th, 10th, and 11th of March. Butchie, Lizelle, myself were in attendance, and as Brad mentioned, there were also representatives from broker associations across North America, Latin America, Europe, and Africa and Asia Pacific. You can move on to the next slide, Brad. Thank you. And really the purpose behind the conference is for us to look at international trends, intermediary-related public affairs issues, and to give direction to the WFII on current and future intermediary-related issues, and also an opportunity for all the participants to engage together on the issues that we're all experiencing. What it also really did give us was an opportunity to discuss and exchange views with various regulators. So that was the IAIS, or the International Association of Insurance Supervisors, which looks after sort of the regulators around the world, and then also the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that really focuses more on governments around the world. And then also, in fact, being that the conference was based in Mexico, we had representatives from the Mexican Supervisory Authority and the Mexican insurer community. And the insights that we received very often, as I've said to many of you before, it's always helpful to see that we're not experiencing these challenges alone, and that internationally we are thinking about the various issues being experienced. Brad, you can move us on to the next slide. And really the challenges that we're experiencing are increasingly global in nature. And the sort of key focus areas are reduced capacity, lack of affordable cover, increasing protection gaps, climate change, financial inclusion, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the implications of AI applications across the insurance process, which Brad has also just touched on a little bit there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a breakdown across each of those different topics, and we're going to start off with protection gaps. And, you know, these are really, it's an increasing problem across the world. They are really areas affecting both by natural catastrophe or NatCat, pensions, cyber risks, health insurance, their protection gaps, all in those particular areas. So we talked more generally about the nature of protection gaps. As I mentioned, these are worldwide issues, but they're increasingly impacting lower and middle income economies because they're more vulnerable communities. And, you know, very often those people don't have cover more generally. climate change is in fact affecting people in poorer areas based on where they're living, and also the frequency of the natural disasters. As I mentioned, the protection gaps include NatCat, cyber, pensions, health insurance. And what was interesting to note is that only a small percentage of these risks are currently insured. Swiss Re recently estimated that only 13% of all natural catastrophe risks were insured, which is a horrifying number when you think about that worldwide. So what are the challenges in addressing protection gaps? And I think, again, always interesting to see that what we experience is not just a South African problem, is a worldwide problem, is a low awareness and limited financial literacy. Consumers often lack awareness of protection gaps. They don't even know that they exist. They don't know that they should have cover when they should. There's low financial literacy, not just a South African problem. And there's a misunderstanding of insurance terms and coverage. It's complex. And again, this is where brokers play a huge role in the education of consumers. There's also choice overload. So consumers face masses of choice. They don't know how to choose between all the different products, all the different providers. And this ultimately leads to suboptimal decisions and inefficient choices. So bearing that all in mind and bearing that these are international problems, what were the things that we discussed around strategies to address those protection gaps? Really, I think, and we've talked about it at length in our non-life exco, and I think we've discussed it previously. We need a multi-stakeholder approach. Obviously, public-private partnerships are a key part of that discussion, but as we've said before, governments are poor. They're not so keen to enter into these relationships right now. So we need to come up with some other innovative solutions with probably the public sector as a stopgap. There needs also to be collaboration between insurers, intermediaries, governments, and regulators, which is crucial to raising awareness and addressing the protection gaps. Risk understanding and mitigation, also key. We've said this before, but it really, really is a very large part of this. So improved risk models, access to data, proactive prevention measures, and building back better. So when something is destroyed, and let's just take a thatch house in St. Francis Bay, build it back with a slate roof, if to avoid that thatch risk. Those things can all work to mitigate risks. And then consumers to look to purchase insurance. Raise the risk awareness, highlight the benefits of insurance, and emphasize the limits of government post-disaster. Because a lot of the time in many countries, people just believe the government will bail them out when there has been a disaster, and this is not in fact the case. So that needs to be addressed. We also need to make the buying process more consumer friendly and encourage consumers to purchase coverage. So these are all important measures that need to be considered, and really the key area where intermediaries can play a role in addressing those protection gaps. Technology is another mechanism which can be used to address protection gaps. There's better catastrophe modeling, satellite imagery, real-time data analytics enable better risk assessment, pricing, and tailoring of insurance products at better and more affordable prices. I worry about some of these things around the risk assessments, particularly in relation to climate. When I look at recent issues in flight with storms hitting both Singapore Airlines and recently in Natal, we have members who were on flights who were caught in the eye of the storm, and we're grateful that they're okay. But you also do wonder about how accurate some of this real-time data analytics is, but that's probably a discussion for another day. So then we also talked about what roles supervisors can play and intermediaries. And supervisors can look to assist in assessing protection gaps, so have a better understanding of what they are. They themselves can work to improve consumer financial literacy. They can also incentivize risk protection, and they can create an enabling regulatory environment and advise on public-private partnerships. And intermediaries play a crucial role in understanding consumer needs, raising risk awareness, and facilitating risk adaptation and mitigation activities to keep insurance products affordable. So really, in conclusion on this one, addressing protection gaps requires a collaborative effort, technological advancements, and regulatory support to enhance the understanding of risk, raise awareness, and incentivize consumers to purchase cover. By working together, all stakeholders in the value chain can really narrow those protection gaps and ensure financial resilience against various risks, including natural disasters, cyber threats, and health emergencies. So Brad, I'm not sure if you would like to jump in there and maybe chat to our members about some of the work that we've been doing around protection gaps in the cyberspace.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, I was just getting super excited because I mean, you hit the nail on so many, on a particular important aspect of the protection gap discussion, and that is the role of brokers and risk management being instrumental in this discussion. So as you correctly stated, with respect to the recent issuing of the Joint Standard on Cybersecurity and Cyber Resilience Requirements, we are starting to see even greater requirements from impacted businesses as regards to their cybersecurity protocols and processes that also forms part of an effective risk management framework. In that vein, members will be very happy to hear that the FIA is planning on rolling out to our members around August this year an FIA IT security package. So 3 packages will be made available. The packages have been developed in a conjunction with the FIA's IT services provider, that's FCA, and the aim is really to help members protect themselves, your businesses, from the vulnerability of cyber threats. So I think this is a great example of the FIA developing solutions for members in respect to the protection gap discussion. With respect to where this discussion has been sitting within the FIA structures, our FIA Non-Life Executive Committee continues to discuss and deliberate the best and most appropriate way within which intermediaries can play a role in this space. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Brad. Much appreciated. So then, without further ado, another area, and also falling into the ambit of protection gaps, was very specifically climate change. As I say, I think the focus on this, particularly, we're seeing so many issues of this, particularly around the world. And it's not only a protection gap, but it is a broader social issue that we all need to be mindful of. In many countries, flood risks, and need I say any more after the last few days in South Africa, KZN, Eastern Cape, Western Cape. Sandra mentioned up front that it is raining cats and dogs down in Cape Town, and flood risks are really posing a huge challenge internationally and nationally. And so in terms of getting cover, it's not that it isn't there, but a lot of people don't know about it. A changing climate's expected to increase the flood risk. And so we need to start to look at the establishment of flood risk insurance programs, which is vital to address this particular issue. So we talked as part of our discussions around what would be important, how could this be addressed? And there were some discussions about national maps being developed on flood risk and other climate-related risks. So this would be an important tool for both an insurer and anybody else in the value chain to help the public. It would help people in terms of buying a house or building a house. If you don't build or buy in a floodplain, or if you do, what risk mitigation measures are you going to put in place, and what kind of cover do you need? So that better specific risk data around these kind of climate-related risks is vital to reduce that risk and also achieve better pricing in future. Because again, what we're seeing is such a limited number of people are actually taking out insurance for flood protection. I mean, just as by way of example, again, in America, only 4% of homes are insured for flooding, and many businesses are uninsured or underinsured. So I can just imagine that from a South African perspective, we're in a very, very similar position. People don't think about it. They aren't aware of the risk. Developments happen around them where 10 years ago there may not have been a flood risk, but as a result of diversion of particular tributaries and rivers and the building of roads, they suddenly land themselves in a floodplain. So these are all important things that need to be considered. So it's all about a bundle of mitigation measures of regulations, such as building better insurance cover, risk awareness and prevention members to really reduce the number of losses and to manage the cover available. So again, these are hugely important areas for the international regulators, which we'll see sort of trickling down to our regulators coming forward around potentially discussions, not only on protection gaps, but particularly around climate. And the OECD have really focused on this because they see it as a key public policy challenge for governments around the world. And they've actually updated their paper, the recommendation on building financial resilience to disaster risk, which foresees establishing strategies for managing the financial impacts of disasters, ensuring comprehensive risk assessment, supporting effective management of financial impacts, and effectively managing the impacts of disasters on the public finances. The IIS, on the other hand, sort of taking the supervisory hat with the supervisory hat on, have developed a draft application paper on climate risk market conduct issues in the insurance sector. And this paper aims to support supervisors in their efforts to identify instances of potential unfair treatment of consumers that can emerge in relation to natural catastrophes, protection products or sustainability-focused products, for example, through greenwashing, because this is becoming a big issue in this particular space. We've seen it in the investment arena for a long time, but as there's been a greater focus on climate and ESG in other sectors, greenwashing is becoming more and more prevalent, and also misleading information on the sustainability of an insurer's operations. They've also developed another draft application paper on climate risk scenario analysis in the insurance sector. And this paper focuses on the use of climate-related scenario analysis as a tool used by both supervisors and insurers to understand the level of risk to which the insurance sector is exposed at a micro and macro prudential level. So again, because these are coming from the international regulators, we will really expect to see that trickling down to our regulators going forward. We know that the IIS considers climate change as a source of financial risk, which impacts the resilience of individual insurers and could lead to financial stability risk. So therefore, an adequate response from both them and from businesses is vital to contributing to financial stability and promoting the maintenance of a fair, safe, and stable insurance market. Then moving on to financial inclusion. This one I think is an important distinction between diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is just making sure that all consumers are taken into account for insurance coverage purposes, because insurance is seen as a key to financial health and resilience. So again, the regulators recognize the important role that intermediaries play in respect of increasing access and reaching consumers. And they're actually currently working on updating a paper for comment that was last published in 2012, with a focus on increasing distribution channels, as well as finding more cost-effective distribution channels. So they recognize that there are trade-offs in finding ways to increase distribution, but also recognize the importance of professional standards. And what we also talked about were what were the barriers to increasing insurance penetration. And these include financial literacy of consumers, distrust around insurers, particularly over the last couple of years with COVID, the whole insurance sector took a knock. There's also lack of ability to be able to contact many people in different places. It isn't just a South African problem where people are in rural areas and it's difficult to contact them. The affordability of insurance products is an issue. And as I say, this isn't just an emerging market problem. It's also impacting advanced economies around the world. There's low risk awareness, affordability again, and low trust. So insurance products need to be redesigned and taken into account and adapted to a new society and the new data that's available. And I think there was certainly a view from participants that regulators should liaise with governments on areas of risk prevention and risk awareness, and promote the increase in trust in insurers and the financial services market more generally. So in respect of the awareness of the changing regulatory frameworks around the world and these barriers and the need for inclusion and the need for expanding insurance cover to all consumers around the world and the various technological developments, one of the areas that the regulators have been looking at is open finance. And this is really from the perspective of giving consumers control back over their data and as a mechanism of increasing financial inclusion. But they're nevertheless mindful of the risks. And we know our own regulator, the FSCA, have issued a discussion paper on open finance. Many of the challenges that we discussed at the conference are included in that discussion paper, particularly around the protection of data and also the risk and challenges around bias and sort of negative impacts on consumer, which Brad briefly touched on earlier with regard to technological advancements. Then we moved on to diversity, equity, and inclusion. As I've said before, this very much aligns to our transformation agenda in South Africa, but I think it's a bigger issue and a really, really important one. And as I've said, I really like this framing that they use in the international space. It is a much bigger topic than simply transformation. And in 2021, the IAIS published a statement affirming that advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion in insurance really supports consumer outcomes and sustainability objectives. And a new paper is actually going to be published on how supervisors can recognize and respond to corporate governance, risk management, and the corporate culture implications that can arise when a business lacks diversity and has poor inclusion. And I think this is really, really important. I think everyone needs to really see and understand what the benefits are to a business of actually ensuring that you instill the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion within your businesses. And again, another paper is also going to be issued on how supervisors, insurers, and intermediaries can use a DEI perspective to better fulfill the conduct of business requirements to treat customers fairly, and particularly for those who are vulnerable or underserved or otherwise have different needs. And we were recently asked to complete a survey on vulnerable consumers for the international regulators. So we can certainly expect that it'll be an increasing focus area by the FSCA going forward. And I think we'll start to see, and we know from the FSCA's transformation agenda, that there will definitely be a focus on how insurers are not only transforming their own businesses, but how they're looking to improve engagement with the diverse consumer groups, and that those groups are treated fairly and without inappropriate discrimination. So all of these things coming through from those international regulators will find their way into our transformation agenda in South Africa. And Brad, maybe just again focusing on this, you can perhaps share with our members some of the work that we've been doing to support our members through this journey.
Thanks, Sam. It's interesting. I had to chuckle, an internal chuckle. Whilst diversity, equity, and inclusion may be terms that are somewhat new to our international counterparts, I think as South Africans, DEI is built into how we should strive to run our businesses and conduct our businesses anyway. So as we collectively work towards transforming our industry, part of the role of the FIA is to help members comply with the legislation. In that regard, during March 2024, we launched our very own FIA transformation guideline for members that was developed in conjunction with the BE specialist. So members, the guideline really aims to provide members with practical solutions for transforming your businesses, whilst also explaining the legislative requirements in a clear and simple manner. So the hope and prayer is that members have been really sinking their teeth in terms of the guideline and figuring out what works for your business. It's not a one kind of sticker fits all. It's really seeking to understand your business and how appropriate and best you can instill transformation programs and initiatives that work for you. So that's really the aim of our guideline that was launched in March. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Brad. Much appreciated. And then finally, we moved on to technological innovation. As Brad's mentioned, this was an important topic that was discussed at the FSCA. And they're really working on developing a better understanding of artificial intelligence, what it means to the industry, and they're looking at the type of use cases that insurers and intermediaries foresee. But while they're considering the opportunities, they're also mindful of the prudential and market conduct risks that could arise. It'll have huge implications for business models, and also obviously for supervisors in terms of how they supervise. And as Brad mentioned, the FSCA is not looking to regulate technology per se. There will definitely be a focus coming from regulators, and we know it's definitely going to come in some, and in some regions there are already papers around governance of AI. So this is an important, a very important topic. It does offer huge opportunities, and those include improved risk management and pricing. It can really enhance the accuracy and risk assessments, and which would lead to better tailored insurance products and increased pricing differentiation. It allows for personalized services, so insurers and intermediaries can offer highly personalized insurance policies, which would increase customer satisfaction and encourage positive behavioral changes. I mean, we've already seen the impact that wearables and trackers and have in cars, and what a benefit that has been. And it can also streamline various aspects of the insurance process, including claims handling, policy renewal, fraud detection, and the like. However, in spite of all the benefits that are understood and are really seen, that the AI can give to the industry, there are a number of risks and concerns. So AI algorithms are often complicated, and they sit in black boxes, making it very difficult to ensure fairness and transparency in decision making. There's a potential for inadvertently perpetuating discrimination biases, which would lead to unfair discrimination, particularly against protected or vulnerable groups. Can also result in financial exclusion, because more accurate risk assessments could result in some consumers being too high risk and thus excluded from coverage or facing unaffordable premiums. And then there's potentially compliance risks, because the collection and use of data by AI systems must comply with data protection and privacy requirements, as well as anti-discrimination legislation. So these are all risks and concerns within AI. So what can be done possibly to mitigate some of these risks? We discussed the fact that transparency and accountability would be important. So you'd need to implement audit trails, transparent data sources, and clear communication about AI's influence on insurance policies, which would help build trust and mitigate some of the risks that I've mentioned. Governance and regulation would also be key. There would need to be guidelines and policies and governance structures specific to AI, while also ensuring compliance with existing regulations and adapting to the evolving nature of AI technology. I mean, this is one of the challenges as well. AI moves so quickly and the changes are so fast that rigid regulation in the form that we've seen it historically would not work. We need to balance personalization and utilization. So we'd have to look at the benefits of personalization with the principles of risk mutualization, which prevent an undue burden on specific individuals or groups. Also, there'd need to be human supervision of AI systems to ensure that especially complex decision-making processes where the potential for discrimination or bias exists are properly managed. So what do regulators need to think about then? As I've mentioned, they need to think about adaptive regulation. They need to ensure that they can accommodate the evolving landscape of AI technology and manage the associated risks effectively. And ultimately, there also needs to be collaboration between regulators, supervisors, insurers, intermediaries, and consumers to monitor the outcomes of AI use and ensure fairness and mutualization in insurance products. So ultimately, while AI holds a great deal of promise to transform the insurance industry, careful attention needs to be paid to ethical, regulatory, and societal implications to harness its benefits while mitigating potential risks. Just before I move to my conclusion, and while not the really scary realm of AI, and just another plug for some of the work that we've been doing, I'm going to hand over to Brad just finally to just discuss something new and a new technological benefit that we have developed for members.
Thank you very much, Sam. I think, whilst it's always appreciated in terms of what's happening, on the global stage and national stage. I think it's also a great opportunity once again to highlight what the FI is doing for its members in response to that. As opposed to just talking the talk, we actually walk the walk. So I'm absolutely happy to share insights with members on the market intelligence tool that was recently launched to members on the 8th of April and has been made available to all FI members for the first 12 months at no cost. So members are really urged to subscribe and use the tool and share their experience using the tool. It is available, or the link to register with the MIT is available via the FI website. If you haven't seen it, please pop Sam and/or myself an email, and we'll absolutely assist you in that regard. So a survey will soon be issued to members requesting feedback on their uptake of the tool. Within the first month of the tool, super excited to confirm on behalf of our comrade Bernard that 214 individual members already downloaded the tool. So the tool currently houses data from KPMG, the Ombud, as well as Global Credit Ratings. And the aim/goal is to expand the tool into all 5 disciplines. So right now it's still mainly non-life at this current stage, but it really is, the goal is to expand to offer the tool to disciplines or the disciplines across all our members. So super excited for members to really sink their teeth into the tool and understand what it can do for businesses right now, because when we take it up to phase 2, 3, 5, we really plan to shoot the lights out. So I think members get on the train now, understand how the tool works, so we can gear up and capacitate for phase 2, 3, and 4. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Brad. And again, I think it's just, it really does show the benefits of technology and what is possible with technology. So thanks for just providing some insights on that. And that really just brings me to the conclusion for today. And thank you for your time and your patience and your effort and your energy. But just to emphasize that while some of these things may seem far away and far removed, we really do know that what we've discussed today will be a key feature of our future regulatory engagements and what we can expect to see coming down the line. But what we do know is that regulators continue to see the importance of the broker role in protection gaps, financial inclusion, specifically in relation to products that are not available, but also in respect of products that are not taken up. And it's important for intermediaries to help customers understand their insurance needs and financial risks. They can also assist with financial literacy. And so in order to move awareness to action may involve more hand-holding by brokers, but mitigation and risk management activities are key in making insurance more affordable and helping customers understand the practical steps customers can take to mitigate their risks. So think about all these themes and trends that we have been seeing coming from an international perspective and really use it as a tool to engage with your clients and promote your role. So thank you very much for your time today. I'm going to stop the share and just see in our last 3 minutes whether there are any questions from anybody that has a burning need for answering. There's not easy to see if there's anything while we're running through our presentations. Sandra, is there anything that needs?
Please. There is a longish question sitting in the Q&A. So if I could ask you just to maybe cast your eye over it in terms of looking at a response. And while you're reading it, I'm going to give you a second to read it. Just an apology to those right at the beginning. There was a little bit of an issue at the beginning. You may not have heard the initial welcome and you just heard Brad sort of starting off. Apologies for that. We are rectifying as we move from Zoom to Teams and webinars. There are little things that we're still learning along the way, but you certainly didn't miss out on anything. Mine was purely a welcome and a message of reminder of the benefits of membership, which we'll share with people. So Sam, I hope that gave you an opportunity to read through the questions.
It did indeed. I take it I'm looking at the one from Leon. Thank you for the question, Correct. Leon. It is a very important question, and it is one we do address on an ongoing basis. So I think we've tried piecemeal where the opportunity has arisen to address this. So for example, in the health space, we every year remind the minister of his obligation to increase commission. We have been engaging with the regulator on the demarcation products and the bans the commission bans to increase those, and they've taken those discussions quite favorably. There hasn't been a great deal of movement on it, but we have been expecting that through Kofi. And it is something that we have raised previously, but we know we will have a specific opportunity with the advent of Kofi to reopen those discussions. So we are absolutely mindful that this is a fundamental key area of concern for members. And, you know, it's always a challenging one when you start to talk about remuneration, but I think we have a great deal of evidence that we can present to regulators on the important role being played by brokers. And I think they're cognizant of that. When we met with Treasury and the FSCA last year to discuss the demarcation commission bans, they were very mindful and actually themselves said that it was a reasonable request based on the important role played by brokers. So I think they are cognizant of this, and it is definitely something that we will continue to address through the Kofi process and the opportunities that will present for us to engage further on this one specifically. Brad, I'm not sure if there's anything you'd like to add there.
Well said. I think just as I close off the FSCA's conference, Sam and I really hope that members either feel informed, inspired, or relieved after the session. And we didn't make you roll your eyes uncontrollably, because when people hear the word legal, regulatory, they want to go into a cardiac arrest. So we really hope you feel inspired, informed, or relieved. Thanks, members. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, everyone, and thank you so much for your time today. And do feel free to reach out to Brad or I should you have any questions you would like to ask us outside of this meeting.
Thank you, members.
Thanks so much.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Sam and
Bye-bye.
Brad. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.